The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
This is the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun on AM 950. Tonight we're going to play parts of interviews from 3 different guests. We've had some amazing people appear on the show, and we think that they should be heard from again. Enjoy the show. We are talking with Moon Girl. We're talking about dream interpretations. And I'm going to be honest, Moon Girl, this is a very short break, so I might have to cut it, or segment might have to cut you off a little bit, but we'll get right back at it. One thing I was curious about is the fact that there is loved ones who pass that come through. And may I read something that a listener sent through?
Yes, please.
So let's see here. And I had one too, and I may not get to it because I much rather hear what listeners have to say. Lauren said, I had a dream that my mother came to me and said her doctor told her she had a problem with her legs and she had to do certain exercises. I told her I had leg weights that might help her. She told me that they would be too heavy for her. I told her that they're the type she could take sections of the weight out so the ankle weight are not too heavy. Now, what I don't know if it's completely clear here, but I have a feeling that Lauren, your mother had passed. I'm understanding, or am I misinterpreting that? Because
that's what I was going to ask. I'm like, did her mom pass, or?
Because let me ask you this, and if you're okay with me taking up more time with trying to explain a dream that has kind of been with me for a while, and that is that in 2015 my dad had passed suddenly, and I had a lot of dreams that I would be in a room and he'd be at the far end of the room, and when I'd catch up with him, he'd go through a doorway, and when I catch up with him, he wasn't in that room. I understand that is a mind game. That's your mind is playing on yourself. You can't get to him. I understand that part. But then about a year later, I had a dream that I was back in my childhood kitchen at my childhood home, and my dad was sitting at the table he always sits at in the kitchen, and my mom, she's over to the side. She's making what we'd call canoopers, drinks for Dad. Dad looked like he was 50, not nearly 80 when he died. He looked like he was in his 50s. He looked really good. And I looked at him, and suddenly the dream became lucid. And I said to him, wait a minute, you're not supposed to be here. You've died. And he disappears. And I said, oh, no, you don't. You come back here right now. And he came back. And I just said to him, I am very angry that you died. I love you very much, but I'm very angry that you died. And the look on his face, once again, whether I believe it's him that came to me, but if it was a dream, where does that look come from? It was truly someone who was touched. That, in my child and throughout my life, I don't think I ever really said, even though we did it in actions, I never truly said, Dad, I love you. So it was a very, very powerful dream that I must have had in 2016, and it has sat with me to this day.
So those were 2 different dreams of him, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so here's the thing. Some people want to debate whether when you dream a past loved one, whether it was a dream or it was actually a visitation. There is visitations. I've had so many visitations before, and even right before they were about to pass, the in-between stage. So that is true. But however, that being said, they're not always visitations. So you have to look at what a dream really means.
Yep.
Those are thoughts. Those are your inner thoughts, the inner, the Jiminy Cricket that your conscience be your guide. So you're talking to yourself all day long, your inner dialogue. When you go to REM sleep, because there's 5 phases of trying to sleep or falling asleep. The first one would be, you're barely kind of dozing off, whatever. Second, brainwaves start kind of slowing down. Your third slows down more.
Mm-hmm.
Your fourth would be more the deep sleep. Okay.
Yep.
And then the fifth would be REM, which is when you finally fall asleep. So that being said, instead of you having your inner dialogue where you're speaking to yourself or you're hearing that voice, you start dreaming things, metaphors, symbolisms, colors, and also emotions and feelings. So when you dream when you dream somebody in your dream, whether they're alive or not,
mm-hmm.
that's your inner dialogue, but in another person's body. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
So for some people, I believe the first one was a dream. I believe the second one was a visitation, especially because it was a lucid dream and you did the right thing, but I'll get into that. So so if you dream your father who had passed, right?
Yep.
And he was telling you something or whatever, that could be a part of you a part of him that you carry with you. In other words, like, how they say, okay, you're just like your father or whatever, or you like coffee like your father.
Yeah.
But that's usually your inner dialogue with yourself in another person's body. Now, when it comes to, okay, I can kind of like do it this way. Say like your grandma, you're very sick, mm-hmm. and you dream that your grandma tells you, hey, you need to take this, maybe this old wives' tale remedy, and you might wake up and think, oh my God, my grandma came to me. She says I should drink this. No, that actually wasn't your grandmother. That was an actual dream. Your subconscious going back and forth in your head thinking, oh, maybe I should take that thing my grandma used to give me. And it comes in the form of grandma because she would nurture you. It's comforting.
That's interesting.
But it actually was a dream. Yeah. It was you talking to yourself through your grandma, and grandma knows best because she would be the nurturer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like it comes in the guise of what you would trust and respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to visitations, yes, there is visitations, and they'll come and give you, there'll be symbolisms and stuff in there. So there's absolutely visitations. And the fact that it was a lucid dream, mm-hmm. and then you did the right thing to confront him, because you're supposed to confront things in your lucid dreams, contrary to what other people say, like, oh my God, I've seen so many TikTok videos where they're not giving the proper information. They're like, oh, if you ever have a lucid dream, don't confront this or that, or don't ask these people around you, who are they, because something horrible can happen. It's the other way around. That's the perfect timing to ask if it is a person or whatever it is, and they will answer you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to answer you as in, as a thing. They could be like, okay, you're going through a rough patch financially or whatever. You ask them, hey, what are you? Even though it's a person you're dreaming, like, hey, I'm the loan that you need to pay and you're worried about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah. No, that's very interesting. And, it just, and, the thing is, it was one of those things that didn't even really think about it. It just was like, I know what you are. I know who you are. You're not supposed to be here. And I always thought that the first set of dreams, and there were a lot of them, they were coping mechanisms. I'm pretty mm-hmm. sure of that. And then that last one was just like, really, I mean, it's stuck with me all these years. And it's one of my favorite memories just in general of life,
mm-hmm.
because it was, it was nice to be able to, that was my way of saying goodbye. He passed so suddenly that mm-hmm. there was no goodbye. There was no goodbye. Yeah. Why don't we do this? Because I want to get into a bunch of other stuff here.
That was definitely a visitation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I have, if I may, I have another one I'd like to throw your way and get your thoughts on, if I may. Mm-hmm. So Brad Webb from Crack Skull Paranormal, he had said he was really sick a couple months ago. He had a dream. He was floating outside above his own body, telling himself, so the dream, him floating, sounds like telling himself not to move so he would heal and get better.
Okay. Floating dreams, even though they may seem scary, they're usually an indication of you're being pushed towards something. So maybe he was really scared, intrusive thoughts
Oh,
that he kept going to, thinking, oh my God, I'm really sick. What if something really bad happens to me? What if I don't get over this sickness? What if I have to go to the hospital? What if I die or whatever? So it's like kind of your mind keeps pushing you to those thoughts.
yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. And I don't want to speak for Brad, but I would think that, depending on how sick you are,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that would be perfect for that.
Hmm.
Wow, that's really interesting. And the one thing that I feel like that we're getting out of this conversation is that your mind is really trying to take care of you, or at least try in some cases trying to take care of you in your sleeping state. Like it's trying to tell you stuff that you may not be listening to when you're awake.
Yeah, or you just don't really want to listen to. You just don't want to confront it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I mean, I'm the king of that. I really am. Lauren she wrote back, and I did see that earlier, Lauren, that she said that her mom did pass. She was the one that had her mom in the dream, and her mom did pass. And she, just like me talking about my dad, she also wrote in the comments that she thought that the dreams felt very real, like it was really her mom.
Okay, I feel bad saying this, and I'm sorry, but I don't think that was a visitation, hon. I'm so sorry.
Because it's interesting, and I'm going to go back to the dream, and obviously, Lauren, you can take whatever you want out of the dream, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the thing that kind of I was interested in was she had passed, but she was talking about her mom was talking about herself, and,
Yeah.
and that's where I was kind of interested, and I was going the same direction as you were, because it is like it's almost like in a sense, like when you do a paranormal investigation, the residual energy, like that's maybe not a residual dream to speak, but maybe it's something that she would have done in a conversation they would have had when she was alive.
Well, it's her talking to herself, saying kind of like maybe if I would have been more on top of it, or maybe if I helped more, maybe it was her inner dialogue versus that being a visitation from her mom.
Hmm.
Do you understand? Yeah,
Yep.
and I know it's you don't want to hear that, but there is differences. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that's what it was, because I told Greg too. Those other ones that he mentioned were not visitations; those were dreams. But the last one was a visitation, and then there is a difference. And the fact that she was talking about herself, and again, that's you, actually her talking to you. So maybe there's a sense of feeling a little bit of guilt or missing her. And then you're talking about there's something wrong with her leg. So to me, that indicates that it could be that versus visitation.
I have another one. It's a bit long. If you're open for it, or I could save it for the last segment, because we have about 7 minutes before we go take our break. Let me read it, and if we don't get to your thoughts on it, we can come back and we can discuss it a little bit more. This is sent to me anonymously.
Mhm.
I had a dream that I went to my old home where my ex still lives. We broke up a year ago. In the dream, his new girlfriend gave me a box of things that my ex had held on to and said were mine, but the items weren't mine. They were things he had bought after we broke up. One of the items was a baseball that had my name on it, as if someone had signed it. I was confused and asked the new girlfriend about it. She said, "We went to the baseball game and I paid for the ball and for him to get an autograph." So she went to the game, paid for the ball for him to get an autograph, and he had them sign your name to it. That's what the girlfriend said, the new girlfriend said in the dream. There was also a teddy bear in the box that she insisted was mine, but I've never seen. I took the ball in my hand, walked to my ex, who was in the living room, and asked him about it. He first looked confused and was acting like he didn't know what I was talking about. Then he started acting upset and wouldn't give me a clear explanation. I later learned that night, I later learned that the night I had the dream was the day he became engaged to his now girlfriend. So that part is not a dream. That they actually got engaged. I just don't understand the meaning of the dream, especially with the sign baseball.
A home represents your state of mind, okay? And the fact that you went back there, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
That's your psyche going back and replaying the connection you had with him, which wasn't good.
You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to ghostboxradio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook, look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, and finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. We have a special, unique audio content that you'll not find anywhere else, plus special episodes. On Patreon, you can find me as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We'll be back with another guest after the break. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950.
The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
Our guest today is Donald R. Schmitt, Witness to Roswell, 75th Anniversary Edition, Unmasking the Government's Biggest Cover-Up, co-written by fellow researcher Thomas J. Carey. The book is available on Amazon. I picked it up. I picked up the Kindle version at the beginning, or I think it's probably at the end of June that I had done so, and it's a very, very good book. Don, do you mind if we get some questions from the comment section?
By all means.
Well, we only have one, I guess, so far. But anyone who wants to ask a question, please put it into the comments. We'll ask it. I mean, this is a great resource to ask. Probably easily one of the best researchers on this subject, and we have them here. So if you have questions, definitely ask it. And Ernie asked the question, what technological advances do you think might have come as a result of reverse engineering from Roswell?
Immediately after most of the wreckage was transferred out of Roswell to Wright Field in Dayton, Ohio, where they attempted analysis and made the first attempts at reverse engineering. We learned through recovered Freedom of Information Act documents that Wright Field, which would become Wright Pat within a number of months, had contracted Battelle Institute just down the road in Columbus, Ohio, with the assignment of developing self-healing metal. Now, the memory material at Roswell is classically described as paper-thin, metal-like material that you couldn't cut, you couldn't burn, even a bullet wouldn't penetrate. But you could fold it, you could crease it, you could crumble it into a ball. And each and every time you would place it down, it would unfurl, it would unravel, it would flow like water as it would assume its original shape and size. So in other words, it possessed perfect memory. It was self-healing metal, so to speak.
Wow.
So here you have Wright Field contracting Battelle, one of the major laboratories in the world at that time, to develop that very metal alloy. Well, then the witnesses also described that there were silken strands of material, like microfilament fishing line, that you could hold a light at the one end and the light would emit. It would come out the opposite end. Well, what are they describing? It's fiber optics.
Fiber optics, absolutely.
Yet fiber optics wouldn't be developed for another 23 years, around 1970. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't the impetus, that it wasn't the origin of such, technology. So I know other things have been speculated, but I have to go by what the eyewitnesses describe as far as actual materials. And so they describe memory materials, and they describe, by all accounts, fiber optics. So those would be the two as far as specific materials that may have indeed been reverse engineered at Roswell.
And what amazing pieces those would be. I guess the thing is, like, and I don't expect you to know this or anyone really to know this, but I mean, what I mean, it'd be interesting to know, such a advanced craft. I wonder what caused it to crash in the first place. Mm-hmm.
We've been able to document, Greg, that there was a severe lightning storm the very night in question. The crash took place late evening of July 2nd, 1947, between 11:30 in the evening. And based on the Stallion Weather Network, we secured the documents. There was a severe thunder lightning storm that came off of the Capitan Mountains to the west at that very time. And as a result, even the ranchers would describe that between the thunderclaps, they heard what sounded like an explosion. So one theory is that it was struck by lightning. Okay, fine. Mm-hmm. We can't prove that. The other is that it was a internal malfunction, that something happened to disable this craft. The other thing, which I generally turn a deaf ear to, but I've had a radar engineer, formerly with the CIA, who I interviewed last year, and he resurrected as far as my need to research the possibility that it was radar. And the reason he suggested was he had me spell out exactly where all the radar facilities were at that time. Mm. And there were even radar tracking facilities based on the White Sands Proving Grounds and their testing of the captured German V-2 rockets that they were launching post-World War II. So you had radar at White Sands, you had radar at Roswell, you had it at Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico, you had it at Kirtland in Albuquerque, and you had it in Vaughn, and you had it west of Socorro. So he then asked, if you were to draw circles as far as the radar lobes, where do they all intersect?
Right there.
And interestingly enough, they all intersect in that very county, Lincoln County, where this took place. And then he brought up the fact that because radar was in its infancy at that time, there was no regulation of the frequencies, the power that was being transmitted. And as a result, there was a lot of interference. So just imagine if all these different frequencies are overlapping. And what if, and he said, if you check, you will find that our own aircraft were having a lot of instrument problems within those regions. So I intend to look into that. And I want to, as far as research, what the powers of their systems were, respectfully. And then he said, send them all to me, and we'll just see. We'll test in a lab. We'll see what type of electromagnetic effects it may have had on such a device. So it'd be an interesting test.
That would be really interesting. And then the follow-up, Ernie, who had asked the first question, he had also asked if stealth technology originated from the stuff picked up from Roswell.
Nothing described by the eyewitnesses to suggest any stealth like material. Mm-hmm. Yet we know that UFOs are often observed visually, and yet there is no radar confirmation.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll never forget, I was speaking over the phone with a Colonel Richard Mitchell, who was in charge of Army intelligence at the Pentagon. And he was assisting me in trying to pull the records of some of the former intelligence officers stationed at Roswell in 47. And we were having, very few results really finding out anything, as though there was even a bit of a black hole situation going at that time. And then we were talking about technology, and all at once he blurted out, well, where do you think we got the stealth technology? So whether it was a Freudian slip or he was trying to help me, but he actually made that comment. Where do you think we got the stealth technology?
Wow. So, and then, do we have an idea what the craft looked like?
Only from the remains of the pod, the capsule, because we had a debris field that covered an area of almost a mile long. And then you had a final impact site about 25 miles from there, 35 miles north of Roswell. And it was described egg-shaped, about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle.
Wow,
so was this the internal cabin, like an escape pod?
Sure.
We can only speculate, but we have them, so I guess it's hardly a stretch to even question that they might have had them even at that time.
I mean, if they're going to be more advanced and be able to travel through great distances, it seems not unreasonable to think that. We're talking with Donald R. Schmitt, co-author and researcher to the book Witness to Roswell, Unmasking the Government's Biggest Cover-Up. We've been talking about this is the 75th anniversary of this. If you have any questions, please put them. If you're watching us on a Facebook Live or Twitter or YouTube, please put a question in. I'll be happy to ask that to Don. The million-dollar question for me, though, is the talking about the bodies, the alien bodies. What was recovered?
There were 4 bodies recovered, and 2 of them were about 2.5 miles east-southeast of the debris field, atop a bluff that we call the D. Proctor site, because he was the one who identified that location.
Sure.
And whether the bodies were sucked out from the decompressurization of the craft or the percussion of the explosion, again, who can tell? But 2 bodies atop that bluff, and then at the impact site, 2 additional bodies and a survivor. We have both military and civilian eyewitnesses to the survivor, not only at the impact site, but also transported back to the base, the gate that they came through, the hangar that the bodies and the survivor were taken to, and then the base hospital, and then the way they were all loaded up and taken to Wright Field. I can tell you even the 2 flights and the 2 B-29 bombers, one was called, one was actually a C-54, I should say. That was piloted by O.W. Pappy Henderson, and the other was a B-29 called the Straight Flush, which was piloted by Colonel James Eubanks. And so I can even tell you their destinations. One flew directly to Wright Field, and the other to Carswell Army Airfield in Fort Worth. And that was going up the chain of command from Roswell.
So the one that survived didn't live very long, right?
No. We have the account beyond Roswell of Colonel Marion Magruder. He was a triple ace from World War II. He also went by the name Black Mac because he was that highly respected fighter pilot.
Sure.
And he was part of the War College class of 47, 48. And he would tell his 5 sons independently about the War College being assigned to Wright-Patterson sometime after Roswell. Well, we've been able to document that he was there in April of 1948, so not quite a year later. And according to Magruder, what he told his sons was they were not only permitted to handle the memory material from the crash, but they were then taken to a darkened room. The lights came on, and then within a glass-walled area was the survivor. He was sitting there on a chair, and he said his heart just went out to it because he could sense that we were treating it like a guinea pig.
Treating it poorly?
That we were testing it and probing it and injecting it and whatever else, our medical doctors could, devise as far as some form of testing. And it was his information that it did not live much longer thereafter.
Do you think it died because of us?
That was his impression.
Oh,
that
wow.
he felt that it died as a result of all of the almost laboratory brutal, the testing that had no. You would think for a unique specimen, for something, again, the first visitor potentially, and that you would take every measure to keep it alive.
Absolutely. How that's disgusting, quite frankly. Let's
but it is human nature, isn't it?
Totally. You're absolutely right.
Science is first. We go for the science,
yep,
as opposed to the humanity.
Ask questions later, bring in humanity afterwards. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Like I said, we are talking about Roswell tonight, and this is quite the conversation. And Don, I mean, I'm getting a lot of comments in the comment section. People are just like, this is just sad to hear about, what happened. I mean, obviously you're feeling the same way. I'm feeling the same way. And you bring up a very good point. Not that it makes it any better, but the fact is that, this is, in a sense, whether we like it or not, this is what the military was there for at that period of time. And as you even brought up, all of the circumstance around why even covering up Roswell. You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to ghostboxradio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook. Look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. And finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. We have a special, unique audio content that you'll not find anywhere else, plus special episodes. On Patreon, you can find me as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We'll be back with another guest after the break. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950.
The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
So what we wanted to do tonight, and Michael is very kind to join, I wanted to have kind of a discussion about just aliens and whatever else. Michael was very kind to remind me that Halloween is coming up, so we could talk about spirits, we could talk about whatever else. And folks, you listening, if you're watching on Facebook, you could put in a question if you want in the chat. We can answer them, especially if you have questions for Michael. Michael's also an incredible published author, has written some very good books. Are you working on anything at the moment?
Yes. So I'm working on another true crime book. It's a local crime to where I am, 1903. Love triangle murder, I think, personally, and led to someone going to the electric chair. And it occurred 2 doors up from where I grew up, which no one had even heard of it.
Wow.
So I grew up on this street and had been in the house hundreds of times growing up, and very fascinating story. And of course, I'm always delving into ghosts, UFOs, and back in college. So I'm sort of doing like a whole bunch of things at once.
Well, but you're retired now from
yes.
The police force.
Yes.
Which is also it's amazing how it all ties together for you in terms of what your interests are and your career as well. It couldn't be more perfect, quite honestly.
Yeah, well, law enforcement ultimately it's especially as a detective, you're driven by curiosity.
Yeah,
always asking questions, always looking for answers. So to me, whether you're investigating a criminal case in the real world, or you're looking into something unknown, that needs explaining, ghosts, aliens and stuff, you're still looking for facts. You're sifting through all the nonsense to get to the truth of things. And that to me, the thrill of the hunt.
And I think we talked about this before. I think that's why that we do find so many police officers that are paranormal investigators, right? Or people in law enforcement to kind of broaden it out.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Even EMTs, first responders, anybody that's really out there on a regular basis, just, spending hours of their day either dealing with people, even EMTs, you're responding to emergencies, you're thinking quickly on your feet, you're solving a problem that's in front of you at that moment, stabilizing someone to get them to a hospital. So it's it's that curiosity. It drives a lot of people.
And I think of a peer of yours, a fellow writer, Richard Estep. Better now, Michael, did you get the picture I sent over to you?
Oh, I'm looking right now. Yes.
Now take a look at.
Wow.
Have you ever seen that before?
No.
So, folks, what it is, and I've talked about this before. I think I've when Sherilyn Carter was on the program, I think I shared this with her. Something that John and I had saw in his backyard. He's in a very rural area, a very clean nighttime sky. If I had time, I'd put it up on the screen for everyone to see. But for those who want to know, it's basically a circle appears in the sky, and then ships come out through it. And what we had seen was the circle in the sky, if you will, and then a ship come out, and it drops, and it moves forward, and right away another one comes out and drops and moves forward. And John and I probably seen, what, John? Literally like 70 of them. We just sat there and we watched and we watched and we watched, and we just stopped watching. It was still happening. And people are like, well, that's Skylink. That is not Skylink. That is absolutely not Skylink. So it was very strange. And then when I saw that picture on Facebook, someone posted that. Yeah, John says we stopped counting. That's totally the case. When I saw that picture, I sent it over to John. I'm like, does this look familiar to you? And he's like, absolutely. So, Michael, that I wanted you to see that. It's crazy. It is truly crazy.
Yeah, that's And how many ships did you see coming out?
I thought we saw like nearly 70 of them, but like John said, we stopped counting. I mean, it's almost like we got bored with it because it's just like, gosh, does this not end? I mean, it just kept coming out and coming out. And it's like, where are these ships going? On a very on a tangential point, John's like well over 70. Okay, I'm happy to hear. I'm glad I'm not like inflating numbers over here, but. Also, in that area where he lives, and I'm not going to say where it is because no one, that's his business where he lives. But there was a UFO sighting the night before, and it made it into the local email group or chat group or whatever else, and there was pictures of it. And then when they went to go look, like John and his wife Chris were going to show me it, they saw that the picture had been removed from the group. So it's like, okay, well, and that could just very well be that they debunked it and they thought, well, this is silly, and they took it off. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the X-Files, but it's also very interesting. It all kind of happened at once.
Right.
So
that's a fascinating. I would like to learn more about that, actually. I've heard accounts where they come out of what appears to be clouds, but never like what that drawing that you just sent was. I'm going to be sending that to my friend Linda tomorrow. I'm like, hey,
yeah,
what do you think? Have you heard of this?
Now, it's interesting that you bring up clouds. So my friend Robert, who actually rents my basement, he came home yesterday, and he's just like, I got to tell you what I saw. And he's driving in St. Michael, which is where I live, and he saw this massive, I think he said like kind of a cloud that was just thin and straight up and down, and it like emulated light from it, and it was moving, but it was moving very, very fast, and it moved so fast, and it was a very cloudy day yesterday, and it moved behind another big cloud, and he said that big cloud reminded him of like the cloud that would precede the ship in Independence Day.
Okay.
But it moved behind it. Where in Independence Day, you saw the cloud and then the ships would come through. Whatever this was, which was lighter, it was white, it moved behind the cloud, the dark cloud, which also would have to mean that it's going the opposite direction of the cloud system coming in. So, right. And it's like, wow, that's pretty crazy. once again, that's I don't have an answer for it. And he said it moved so fast he couldn't get like video of it. So
that I definitely believe.
Right. And for all we know, it could be, and I'm not doubting what he says, but for all we know, it could be light on a plane that creates some sort of like, because it's partly cloudy, it's sunset, anything can happen. But he's a pretty smart guy, so for him to be like this was happening, and I don't have an answer for it, and for someone he certainly believes, but he's not easily susceptible, say like I could be, so I mean, right. I took it as being something very worthwhile to kind of consider. And I should actually go to the St. Michael Facebook pages and see if anyone else had talked about it, in the community pages and stuff. See if anyone else had mentioned it. I'm going to do that actually. Linda Judd had a question for you. She wanted to know if you think that MUFON is the organization who can help answer questions of folks who have been abducted. What are your thoughts on MUFON, I guess?
Yeah, I think MUFON, is one of those groups. They have standards, they try to adhere to. I know just to be an investigator of those, you have to go through their selection process. Yeah. Not anybody can just, join MUFON tomorrow and be like going out interviewing potential abductees the next day.
Yeah.
They try to protect their name and their reputation. So I don't think any one organization or person is going to solve anything. It's going to be really the collaborative work of a bunch of people, whether it's me, yourself, MUFON and other individuals and groups out there. But MUFON is definitely in a great position because they are national, they are large, and they do have a great network of people. So they're able to connect people who ordinarily may not necessarily talk to one another.
Yeah.
Which, networking. So, again, MUFON is definitely a great resource, and they're going to come up with, I think, they're going to be a key to answering a lot of the questions. Unfortunately, I don't know how many of these answers we're going to have in my lifetime, your lifetime, or potentially, how many lifetimes.
Well, and that's a good question. What do you think of that congressional committee? Do you think that was a step forward or a smokescreen, or what are your thoughts on that?
I've grappled with this since it became out because, on one hand, I think that the government has to know more than they're letting on.
Yeah.
Even if they're not necessarily great at keeping secrets all the time, but something like this, if truly the government was in possession of UFO technology, including potentially wrecked craft or biological remains, I can see where that's going to be a very well guarded secret. On the other, are they calling? They're having all these hearings and committees and we're going to start collecting reports. Is it just to make people shut up? Like, hey, we're taking you seriously. They just had a report come out from the Department of Defense a few days ago with reporting a certain amount of sightings. I think it was like 270 something on, the UAPs, as they call them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them from military personnel in restricted airspace.
Yeah.
But of course, they're pretty sure that they're probably nothing that can't be explained. So what are you saying? Your own pilots aren't trained well enough to recognize things that they should be able to recognize,
There's no good I mean, and it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? Just for that point that you just made. If they are struggling to try to figure out what some of this stuff is, and it's so easy for people to point back and be like, well, then you're how are you going to tell if an enemy whatever is coming towards us if you can't tell what this is or whatever else that might be, or stuff flying over from China or whatever the case may be. It's really tough. And I had on Erica Lukes, ufologist. She's been on Ancient Aliens and stuff, and she's just like, this is a big smokescreen, kind of to what you had alluded to. Like, okay, this might shut some people up. And I'm like, well, what do you think of how the next hearing is going to be? And she's just like, what next hearing? She's like, I'll be very surprised if they all get back together again. I mean, they did something. And, she also had mentioned the idea of, Jeremy Corbyn and George Knapp, who are the two that kind of are the outsiders who were pushing to get this going and stuff. She calls it a weaponization of this information of aliens, that, weaponizing this information, weaponizing the government in terms of what UFO is, and almost maybe even trying to cause some sort of, maybe a panic attack or something about that. Once again, they don't call it politics for nothing, right? Politics is all about what is the shell. What is the shell that actually has the real information underneath it, right?
And I think that's a good point. I think if you create enough chaos and questions, no one really knows what the truth ever is.
No.
So, deception, disinformation are classics throughout history. People have used it. We used it to great effect in World War II. We had the Germans convinced we were going to invade, France through the Pont de Calais with a fake army headed by Patton. And even on the morning of June 6, 1944, when we're landing ashore on the beaches, Hitler and the German command was convinced this was a decoy. We were still going to land because they were so well convinced. So if you can have people ingrained in the UFO field unsure of what the truth is, it just keeps people guessing. And I think disinformation, there's been allegations for a long time that the government has plants in the UFO community to look ridiculous and to say ridiculous things to undermine the credibility. So, the best way to keep people guessing is to just keep throwing things out there.
Absolutely. As we're running out of time, Michael, could you remind us where we can find your podcast, please?
Yeah, so you can find us on Apple Podcast or any of the podcast streaming services. You can go to HudsonRiverRadio.com. It's UFO headquarters. That's UFO HQ, and it's Linda Zimmerman and myself. And again, we new episodes every month, and you have years worth now to binge listen to.
Do it. You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to GhostBoxRadio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook, look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, and finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. We have a special, unique audio content that you'll not find anywhere else, plus special episodes. On Patreon, you can find me as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.